I am Johnny Rodriguez, Director of Innovation at Fresh Consulting. And today we are covering a topic that's actually pretty popular. You probably heard about, a lot of you probably heard about augmented and virtual reality. The metaverse is definitely a hot topic right now. During 2021, it was one of the most trending topics. We saw it at South by Southwest and CES, and we saw a lot of Fortune 500 companies talking about it. So we're going to talk a little bit more about what's going on with that as well. But these three technologies are emerging technologies, and there's a lot of different use cases and a lot of advancements happening on a month-to-month, almost week-to-week basis, and we like to keep track of some of that stuff. Before I dive into that today on business applications for AR, VR, and the metaverse, I want to introduce my company, the company I work for. So we are Fresh Consulting. We are headquartered in Bellevue, Washington. That's Washington State. And we are at 4 locations, about 380 plus employees and growing. Lots of new employees every month right now. Founded in 2007. But we are a team, it's a global team. We are in locations all over the world. And we're a team of strategists, designers, developers, engineers, roboticists, and we help our clients build the future. Part of the name Fresh was very intentional, is helping companies stay relevant, with their competitors, and also staying ahead. How to look towards the future and make sure that they're staying ahead. And so that's something we do a lot of. So today we are talking about augmented reality, virtual reality, and the metaverse. The reality is we actually do cover quite a lot more than those as far as service offerings. We're really deep in this hardware space and the industrial, autonomous robotics, autonomous vehicles. We do quite a lot in software. We do quite a lot in design and strategy. I don't know how much you can read from there, but we do hit quite a lot of categories with that. And augmented virtual reality and the metaverse are these emerging technologies that we like to stay on top of. So I'm Johnny Rodriguez, Director of Innovation, and I run our Fresh Labs kind of team. And we're looking at a lot of these technologies and seeing what are the applications for our customers, what are the applications for businesses today on all spectrums and in all industries. And so we're looking at a lot of that. So we do have a few of us here today. Gary's in the back. Okay, Gary, if you can wave, he's there. If you have any questions at the end or at the beginning, come find me. We have a few others coming. And would love to chat with you on different ways that we might be able to leverage technologies like these or any of these service offerings that we kind of talk about. So this is kind of the structure of my talk today. I'm really excited to talk about this. I'm really passionate about these different topics, but we're going to start with augmented reality. We'll jump into the virtual reality, and then we'll jump into the metaverse. And we're going to dive into what's the current state of some of these technologies, and we'll talk about some hardware that exists across these, and we'll talk about what's coming next, what are some predictions towards the future, and then we'll go into some practical use cases, right, that are applicable across different businesses. I have about 20 slides that I'm not going to show that have really particular examples of different applications of AR, VR, and the metaverse. We're going to cover about 45 minutes of content, and then I will have a Q&A towards the end here, and you'll be able to ask questions maybe more applicable to your industries, to your business, maybe anything that kind of comes to mind. Feel free to jot those down. We do have a second microphone, and I'll pass those around a little bit towards the end. So, to begin, let's talk about augmented reality. Before we dive into that, I think it's important to know this difference, the distinction between augmented and virtual reality. A lot of us may have interacted with augmented reality. Maybe you have the Amazon app and you've placed furniture. I know I did that recently with my new office and thinking about where I might place furniture and what I might buy, right? And augmented reality is basically putting this layer over the real world. You still have access to see what's going on in the real world, but you're placing objects over the front of that, right? And then on the virtual reality side, it's a little bit more immersive, actually quite a lot more immersive. You're actually not seeing the real world, right? And it's simulating a 3D environment that you're able to kind of look around. So think, the Oculus, I guess now the Meta Quest headset as one of those. And on the augmented reality, you see kind of the HoloLens 2 there, that you're getting a little snippet of that. You might have used your phone. But it is very much a spectrum. There are other things that fall under these that I won't cover, but a lot of times people talk about XR, it's XR, and there's a lot of confusion around, well, what is XR? XR is kind of this umbrella category that covers augmented and virtual reality. So as we talk about augmented reality, there's quite a lot. I'm not going to dive into all of these. I can give you a whole history and see kind of what happens, what's been happening since the 90s here. But I'll stop on a few of these that kind of stand out. I remember being in 2009, I was in college, and I remember that AR Toolkit came out to Adobe Flash, and I went and created my first augmented reality experience. I had my business card, I held it up to my webcam, and I could see my Twitter, my little email icon, and I think it was a photo of myself, and I kind of moved it around. It was not practical in 2009, but that was the first time we saw like an actual AR toolkit available for developers to kind of work with. Some companies like Vuzix started to think about this and release some things. We saw Volkswagen in 2013 debut the MARTA app, which was kind of looking into using augmented reality for their business. 2014, if you remember, we had the Google Glass that came out. Unfortunately, a little bit of a flop, right? There were some interesting things there. A lot of learnings from that kind of that experience. But other companies started to come out. Daiquiri came out with the smart helmet, started thinking about the industrial use cases of augmented reality. In 2015, Vuforia released their SDK, and so some of these are a lot of like SDKs, APIs, kits. These are all things that are available for these developers to start building these experiences. And what you'll see is that these kits, the more and more accessible they are, the more it expands and accelerates the use of augmented reality on different devices and different use cases. I remember in 2016 very clearly when Microsoft launched the HoloLens and how big of a deal that was, and thinking about, wow, this is a major company launching a VR headset, or sorry, an augmented reality headset. And I also remember Pokemon Go. I was in Bellevue Park, Bellevue, Washington, and I went to the launch of Pokemon Go. I don't know if you remember this or if you've seen this. It was a park, and there was a whole bunch of millennials that grew up with Pokemon cards like I did. Pokemon cards that you put in your binders and collecting all that. Augmented reality came to the masses. And I don't have the video to show. It's going to be a little too choppy, so I didn't put it up here. But I have a video of us saying, Pikachu, and then hundreds of people running, adults, not kids, not children, not my kids, not my 3 kids, but adults, running to go catch a augmented reality Pikachu. And obviously it's a little gimmicky, right? It's like, okay, Pokemon Go, how does that apply to my business? The reality is it brought augmented reality to the masses. And what we saw was real applications to our smartphones. Android, iPhone users, all using augmented reality all at once. And for months, and even still today, I know a lot of people that still play that particular game, but Niantic was the one that made that, brought that to the masses. Apple released ARKit in 2017. That wasn't too long ago, if you think about it. 2017, Apple's releasing that. Snapchat releases Lens Studio. IKEA launches their Place app, which I use as well, similar to the Amazon app, placing my furniture in my room. So we're starting to see these companies start to release more and more kind of actual use cases of leveraging this technology. 2018, Magic Leap 1 gets this $3.7 billion of valuation. I remember grabbing that 2 months after they got released, and at CES I put them on, and I was a little disappointed seeing that it wasn't quite as awesome as I thought, and great promo videos, but the headset wasn't quite there. But again, another major company releasing something. Google launching in 2019, doing more with the Live View AR. Other things, other companies like Meta or Facebook at the time launching Spark. Google acquires a few different AR businesses. You're starting to see these bigger companies come out with smart glasses, which isn't quite augmented reality, where things are sticking to the environment as you move around, but maybe like a heads-up display, similar to kind of Google. So companies starting to step into these everyday wearable smart glasses with sound or maybe a visual display. That was a big trend last year. A lot of the big companies came out with those. And then this year, we saw the Magic Leap 2 come out. We saw some upgrades with Vuzix. Google Glass, they had their big event and they talked about, hey, here's this prototype where we can do live translation with people all over the world. And it gave some really interesting use cases using all their Google Translate technology, and they use that in an augmented reality application. So lots of things kind of happening here from headsets and devices. And so what I put here on the screen is today's mainstream augmented reality headsets. Some of these are already released. So Microsoft HoloLens 2, Magic Leap 2, Spectacles is one that's a little quiet. Nreal Light, the Kuro Gallium. Niantic's just teased theirs. That one's not quite out yet. Qualcomm last week introduced their reference AR platform, so you can see some glasses there. Creel's another one. So I get this question all the time at Fresh. Which of all of these augmented reality headsets should I focus on for my business? Which one should I work on? And the answer may not surprise you, maybe it will. Well, it's actually the smartphone. The headsets are great, and actually there are some, and I put this on here, you know, the HoloLens 2, maybe the Magic Leap would be probably maybe number 2 or number 3. If you're gonna use headsets, thinking about industrial applications, or if you want that hands-free experience, today in 2022, those are kind of the better devices. But app-less, right, not having to download augmented reality apps, like a Pokemon Go app or things like that, on the smartphone are some of the most, that's where you can get to the masses. You can get to a lot of people. So I think about like the Super Bowl in January came out and they said, hey, scan this to see a 360 degree view of, who was it, 50 Cent and Snoop Dogg and all these artists that were performing. Download, you know, go in and scan it and you can actually experience it. And I remember I scanned it, it just went to my browser and it launched and I kind of looked around and I was on the stage with 50 Cent and Snoop Dogg and it was really interesting to get that experience. It was a really immersive experience with a live show, right? And I've seen that with NBA games. We're seeing that with every single NBA final game, NBA playoff game, all browser app-less experiences that are accessible to the masses. And why? The big reason is because there's 3 billion users with Android devices. There's 1 billion users with iPhones and counting, right? Lots and lots more coming. I think the stat is 65% of these 4 billion users actually have access to that browser-based technology to actually run an augmented reality experience. So what you want to do is, yes, the headsets are great, educate yourselves, play with it, let your teams, if you have a labs department or if you want to test things out, go and see what's going on with those, because those are accelerating quickly, and we're going to see those accelerate even faster. But as far as reaching customers and actually using real applications for augmented reality, think about app-less experiences with augmented reality. So let's talk about actual practical use cases, right? Because I talked about, okay, you're on a stage with 50 Cent. How is that applicable to my business, right? Maybe not as applicable there. So let's talk about these practical use cases for augmented reality. You can take a picture of this if you want, but this is essentially the 8 main use cases for businesses today with leveraging augmented reality. So personalized contextual education. So it might be that you're educating them on a particular service offering or something in your office. That's something we've done at our office. It might be contextual product shopping, things like Amazon, like we talked about. If you have a product that you sell, very, very easy use cases there with augmented reality where somebody might place it in their environment. You know, if it's glasses, placing them on your head. If it's something that you're wearing, put it on your body. There's a lot of opportunities there from a product perspective. Then there's the real-time remote repair and maintenance. You're seeing that a lot from an industrial standpoint. Think about oil and gas, thinking about a lot of these, you know, factories and being able to remotely help people. We're seeing more and more companies do things like that where it's like, hey, let me remotely help you change your oil on this motorcycle that you just bought. And so like BMW is offering that, for example. A lot of different car manufacturers are thinking about that application as well. This is like hands-on machinery training. So, right, being able to see something, hey, how do I turn this knob? And especially if there's more risk involved with the machinery you're interacting with, being able to have that layer over the top is quite helpful. Cost-effective personnel training, overlaying digital twins is another thing. What that means is not a twin version of yourself. If you have a piece of machinery, being able to see that in a different context, again, for the sake of risk of you know, heavy machinery, risky machinery, things like that. Predictive sensing and safety. So we're seeing that again in a lot of industrial use cases. So these are kind of the main ones that we see. If you're a Fresh Consulting, for example, we don't sell a product. We're not on the industrial side, and we're thinking about augmented reality and the different use cases. A lot of times we do it for a lot of the contextual education, and I have some examples I can show at the end. For example, in Austin, Texas, which is where I'm from, we were at National Instruments, had this big conference, and we were showcasing, they helped put us right front and center of an industrial autonomous, we built 9 industrial autonomous robots, or vehicles, for one of our customers, and NI wanted to highlight us because we used different sensors that came from National Instruments. So we had these massive vehicles, right? A club car and like a forklift kind of looking vehicle, 2 vehicles, and what we put were augmented reality tags around it. And so our sales team and people that were kind of talking about Fresh could go around and hold an iPad and then you'd see like a video pop up talking about how we leverage that technology, or seeing something pop out in 3D and expand and be able to give more insights into how we leverage, like for example, a LiDAR sensor or an e-stop, and why those are important for the experience with industrial vehicles and things like that. So if we think about entry points today, it might sound ridiculous to think about Snapchat and Instagram as, why would I look at those for my business? Well, this is why it's actually important to talk about. They just came out with this 2 weeks ago. They have 339 million daily active users. And 73% of those users, which is 250 million users, every single day are engaging with augmented reality. This is not just face effects. This isn't just like, hey, let me like change it to the crying face. I don't know if you've seen that trend. Or let me put on the mask that looks like for something, you know, different masks or different hairdos or eye color. We're talking, they flip the camera and they're interacting with an augmented reality experience, or they're interacting with ads. That's the majority of use cases today, officially past 50% for Snapchat. And 78% of their total user base is Gen Z and millennials. So if your business is targeting at all this 9 to 34-year-old group, you might consider Snapchat. It is not a browser, or sorry, an app-less experience, but it is one where you have massive user adoption for an application. Instagram is very similar. There aren't a ton of really hard statistics on that, but they are at a very similar kind of realm of targeting that 9 to 34-year-old Gen Z, millennial kind of age. We like Eighth Wall, something it's a technology, it's a platform we leverage quite a lot. There's other technologies that are open source and proprietary, like 3JS and AR.js, all these different libraries that you might leverage. Come to a company like Fresh for some of those if you want to build custom experiences. But we really like this browser-based AR platform from Eighth Wall. They just got acquired by the company that made Pokemon Go about a month ago. And they're going to keep doing their business that way, and they want to make that accessible to businesses. But that's a platform where it gives you about 50 different ways where you can use augmented reality in your business without ever having to have your user download an application. Definitely check them out. We have no connection to them. I'm not promoting them. We're not getting paid for them, but they do some really amazing stuff, and we've leveraged them all the time for augmented reality. So those are some actual practical entry points for AR today. Lens Studio, Instagram, and Eighth Wall, about 70 to 80% of that, you can build 70 to 80% of those experiences without a single line of code. So if you're thinking, well, I don't have a development team, that's okay. They make it very, very easy. And that, again, as more and more of these kits become available, the more it enables more experiences, right? So what's next with augmented reality? I won't spend a lot of time on this. I can spend this time later, but we're going to see a lot of waves come with it. A lot of it is like adoption and infrastructure, right? Low latency. A big enabler of augmented reality wearables is when we get to the basic smart glasses and then more advanced smart glasses, but getting into more of the, getting into a daily, everyday wearable AR headset that doesn't seem daunting, right? Where people know, hey, you have cameras on your glasses or something like that, right? Being able to have everyday wearable, ergonomic glasses. I actually wore some from Focals by North. They got acquired by Google, of course. A lot of the acquisitions like that happen. I wore those for about 8 months, and I was so impressed because I thought I was going to actually be more connected to technology, and I would be like, okay, I already have my watch, I already have my cell phone, I have my screen. Too many screens. It actually decreased my usage of my phone and my watch by like 70%. And it was actually contextual notifications that would pop up. It would be, as I talked to people, it wouldn't interrupt. It knew I was talking, and then it would, when I'd stop talking, oh, here's your summary. 3 messages just came through. Or step-by-step navigation between, of my drive. And so we're going to see more and more of those applications come. And we're not far away. This isn't like a, give it 10 to 25 years. We're talking 3 to 5 years. We're going to start to see more and more of that. Some quotes here from Mark Zuckerberg from Meta, right? He's saying, things like TVs and physical objects might be just something you download. That might sound really far-fetched, but it's true. You'll be able to place things in different environments, and it'll stick to that. If I want to put a TV up on that wall, I can put a TV up on the wall, and it'll just stick there, and it'll remember that. Tim Cook from Apple says, promise even greater in the future, critically important part of Apple's future. They know that. There's a lot of rumors about what they're going to release, and we were thinking that when I presented today with WWDC yesterday and this whole week, we thought there'd be some new announcements. Not quite yet, probably September or beginning of next year. They're going to announce a mixed reality headset, which is kind of a combination of virtual and augmented reality. So keep an eye on what Apple will release. Keep an eye on what Google will release on an additional version of their Google Glass. Satya from Microsoft saying, perhaps the ultimate computer. So quite a lot of applications, interesting insights, stats around augmented reality. It'll be interesting. It'll be very exciting, and we'll learn a lot as we get more and more of those to come out. Okay, so let's jump into virtual reality. A little bit different. Again, we're talking about this other side of the spectrum here, where it's that immersive experience. You're not getting the layer over the top. So the applications are slightly different. Some are the same, but applications are slightly different. And I won't go too deep into this, but what I want to mention is that we start to see kind of more and more of those SDKs and availability start to actually happen after 2010. So you got 2012 on that bottom row. We're starting to see, Oculus Rift on Kickstarter, and then we see a few years later getting bought by $2.3 billion, right, by Meta. It's starting to get PlayStation, right? Sony starting to release their version for gaming. We're seeing a lot of gaming and gaming applications with virtual reality. And that's kind of been the thing, is like, oh, cool, if you want to go play Beat Saber, right, this really fun game, go get your Quest. And there's been a lot of gaming applications for virtual reality. We start to get to like 2014, 2017, we start to see more and more headsets that are more powerful. We start to see an Oculus Rift, and then we see the Oculus Go for the first time, which was basically the first time we got a wireless, I don't want to call it mainstream because we didn't get 50 million users of it, but a mainstream device get released that is wireless, right? And you can actually kind of move around. It had you can look up and down, left and right. And then we get to 2020, or actually a few years after that, you get the updated versions of the Oculus Quest 1, and then the Oculus Quest 2, now called the Meta Quest. And then now you can actually walk around, what's called 6 degrees of freedom. So you can go up and down, left and right, but now you can actually move around. And so that's enabling more and more experiences. I won't spend a lot there, but lots happening last year, more happening this year around virtual reality, a few updates on, we're getting basically, the summary on what's advancing with virtual reality is we're getting higher quality, higher density of pixels, so we're getting higher resolution in the headset. And we're about to get this big rush of eye tracking and mouth tracking. I know that sounds a little crazy, but what that means is now your avatar can move its mouth at the same time as you move. Or if you're looking in a certain direction, it might change the focus. Or if you're looking up close, you can see that your pupil moves, and then now something is closer or further. So you get to that more hyper-realism and photorealism from a virtual reality standpoint. These are all the headsets. There's been some updates even since I made this about a month ago, and I've been updating these and updating these. A lot of people's experiences their most common experience with virtual reality might be the Google Cardboard, or they have a friend, or they have their own Quest headset. The Quest is actually the best device right now for virtual reality, and the reason for that is that it is a wireless VR headset, and it has that 6 degrees of freedom. Again, up, down, left, right, moving forward and backwards. That's what 6 degrees of freedom is. And it's a headset that's is enabling that. It's the most successful VR headset to date. They've sold 15 million units since they launched it in Q4 in 2020. So it is a very powerful headset, very accessible, and there's actually more and more coming. I'll just go back a couple slides on this. So we know that Meta has already announced Project Cambria up on the top right, which is a more powerful device. They haven't actually said what it is, but we know it'll be a more powerful device, probably a mix between the Oculus Rift and the Quest headset. And what that will mean, again, higher quality imagery. We might get, the eye tracking, mouth tracking, that kind of thing, again, out to people. They sold quite a lot of headsets during Christmas, which was a big deal. It was the #1 Christmas gift of 2021, was the Quest 2 headset. So that's pretty interesting if you think about the last few years of different toys and things that would come with that. So, practical uses for VR today, there's a lot. We can think about, I can give you a list of 20, but I think about the ones we've worked with customers, or some that we worked with ourselves. Personalized virtual training, contextual telepresence, real-time onboarding, hands-on walkthroughs, overlaying digital twins again, and immersive branded experiences. So just to give you some examples, we see people simulate emergency disaster events, right? If you're in an industrial application, they say, hey, if an emergency happens, let's simulate that and let's train our employees, our people, to know how to react to those. And so you can go and create a very similar experience for that, and then be able to train people on how to react under pressure, right? So that's what I mean by some of those personalized virtual training. Again, overlaying digital twins, we're seeing a lot of industrial applications there where they make, let's say this is our warehouse here in this space. We'll go and recreate that in a virtual environment space and say, okay, if a business is going to put their assembly line here, what is that going to look like? How much space will it take? How do we rearrange these tables and the spaces? And so you can start thinking about the spatial component that is involved with like a warehouse and things like that. For our business, we, with Fresh Consulting, we're doing a lot as it relates to immersive branded experiences. So sometimes customers say, hey, our brand is important to us and we're thinking about how we can convey that to people in an immersive way, right? And so sometimes we'll create experiences that are, a customer came to us and said, we have this industrial drill that drills underground. There's no way we can take them there. And we don't have really good quality video of that down there. Can you simulate that and can you show us what that might look like so that we can show a drill, building tunnels, and can you recreate that? And so we did an experience for that for a company that was showcasing something at South by Southwest. Or thinking about, hey, the pandemic hit, and now people aren't coming to our office to meet with us. Is there a way that I can meet with them virtually? Can I meet with them in a way that feels more immersive? And there's a lot of science and research coming out with that. I interviewed a CEO that has been running his entire business in virtual reality for almost a year. It's a company called Larvol, LARVOL.com. And I only mention them because it's really interesting. And they've learned a lot. There's actually like MIT and Harvard are studying how the effects of running a business like that. Is it hurting their eyes? Is it changing how they perceive things? And one of the positive findings that they've had is that the spatial component that VR gives, right? Being able to be, when we were in person, as I get the proximity between me and another person is very critical for our relationships and our empathy towards people. And so as they've gone from in-person to 2D meetings, let's call those Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, Zoom meetings, to going into a virtual environment and bringing back the spatial component, the proximity component, it's actually allowed them to bring that empathy back. And people are staying longer. People are having better experiences when they're hosting things like a meetup or a daily stand-up or kind of a fun experience. And so some interesting uses there with virtual reality. We're going to see a wave of virtual reality there as well, of a lot of adoption. One of the biggest things that needs to happen is mass adoption. We haven't gotten there. If you think about the number of years it took to adopt airplanes and how crazy that felt back at the time, big machine up in the sky, what in the world? And then, mass adoption, the number of flights happening a day is insane. And then you kind of think of all the different technology life cycles to get to that mass adoption of 50 million users. Keep going down that path, right? Cars, think about the microwave, right? Telephones and how long it took to adopt those. And the more and more as we've gone through time, that cycle or the time to 50 million is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And we're seeing, like I said, with Meta, they've sold quite a lot of headsets. It's actually at closer to that $20 million unit mark. And so we're not quite there at that mass adoption. So that has to be something that happens for one of the waves of virtual reality to be enabled to more and more people and experiences. We talked about the face and eye tracking, compact optics, things like ergonomics. That's a big deal today. I have a virtual reality headset and I use it for a lot of things. I can't tell you, I can't last longer than, if I go 2 hours with the VR headset, my eyes are fatigued, right? I feel physically tired. And there's a lot happening there from these companies thinking about how do they reduce that? How to reduce the fatigue or the actual weight of the headset and the distribution of the weight on your head. And so there's more and more things happening there. Obviously, more improved creator tools will enable more things, more sensing. Like, how can I feel when I touch something? What does that look like? Is that going to be a glove? Is that going to be some other technology that makes me feel things and touch things? We're going to talk about the metaverse in just a minute here, but the metaverse might be a big enabler of VR adoption and things like that too, not because VR is the only way you can get quote unquote into the metaverse, it's because it's the most immersive way to be connected inside of that kind of virtual world and interact with people. So it's one of the most immersive ways to interact with the metaverse. And we're going to see more and more jobs and stuff come from the metaverse as it relates to, yes, virtual worlds and having a representation of your business in a virtual environment, and things like that. So lots of technology advancements and ergonomics and tools that are needed to basically get us to mass adoption of virtual reality and uses for our businesses. So going back a little bit there, yes, quite a lot of opportunities there for virtual reality, but if you think about, just before I jump in here to the next topic of the metaverse, I just want to stop and say that virtual reality and augmented reality are very similar, and they often get bundled, but they have very separate applications and usage, right? With smartphones being an enabler of augmented reality, we talked about 4 billion Android, iPhone users, and all the percentage of users that actually have access to a browser-based, AR experience, versus something like virtual reality. We're still talking hundreds of dollars for a headset, right? We're talking, well, you might need a little bit of space to walk around and be able to use it. You can't wear it for longer than 2 hours. So we're not quite there where you want to be focused on it. If I'm thinking about your businesses, you may not want to be thinking about it as the primary driver of your business, but if there are those applications that we talked about, as we think about training to reduce risk, or telepresence, remote touring, right, for potential customers. If you're in real estate, think about what you could enable from a virtual reality standpoint to be able to immerse somebody in the space to show them an environment. That's actually how I bought my house, by the way. I moved from Washington State, and I was going to build a house here in Austin, Texas, and I couldn't keep flying down, and we were thinking about touring, so we actually toured about 10 different homes. Matterport was the company that enabled the scanning of all the rooms, and I just went into the browser, and I put on my Oculus headset at the time, and we went room by room, and we got a sense for how big the room was. And I put my arms out and thought, this tub seems a little small, or this entryway seems a little small. So I got a sense of, again, proximity and spatial awareness. So it allowed us to do some of that. And then when we got to building our home, we kind of saw that, okay, this actually might fit better for our kids and our space. And we actually committed without ever kind of flying, even seeing a home. And so not everyone does that kind of thing, but it was just interesting to see that we're at a place where the technology is enabling things like that. So the metaverse, let's jump into the metaverse here for a little bit. Let's start with this. The metaverse has been enabled because of quite a lot of advancements and convergence of a lot of technology. So because of the advancements of the smartphones that we have, augmented reality kind of being advanced, virtual reality, we went from obviously 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, the speed of internet for cellular devices, the browser processing and the capabilities in the browser, the fact that the pandemic accelerated remote work, right? Having to think about how do we work and do it effectively from all over the world or from different locations. The accessibility of gaming, things like the blockchain, and you've probably heard that as another trend thing there, but Web3 and the blockchain and NFTs, all of that is actually a large contributor to this concept of the metaverse. The advancements of 3D graphics, again, and the fact that you can consume those in something like a browser, modern day browsers, and digital economy. There's quite a lot more I could add to this list, but all of those are technologies that have created a convergence to enable this new concept of the metaverse. And before I dive into some of that, yeah, the metaverse is very much an umbrella category as well. You can put things like augmented and virtual and gaming and NFTs, all that kind of under this umbrella. And so my particular department, Fresh Labs, often talks about the metaverse, and a lot of times people think we're talking about Facebook's or Meta's version of Horizon Worlds, and we're jumping into VR. No, actually, we talk about technologies like augmented and virtual reality and browser-based XR experiences and blockchain, because those are things that are are enabling things like the metaverse. So if you think about the definition of the metaverse, it's actually quite interesting. Every time I text that, I'm like, hey, we're about to give this speech on the metaverse. It auto-corrects the metaverse. It puts the little squiggly red line under it, and it says, this is not a word yet. If you go to your dictionary on your phone and you go look for it, there is not a single definition that is an official quote-unquote definition from a dictionary. And that's because it is very much an emerging technology, and there's a lot of definitions. I've analyzed over 50 definitions, and I've come up with, I think, the most comprehensive version, I think, of the definition of the metaverse, and there's two here. This is the second most, but the first one is The metaverse is an expansive network of interconnected 3D spaces where you can work, play, shop, and socialize with other people who aren't in the same physical space. So there's a lot of words in that are actually pretty important. Expansive network, interconnectivity, thinking about being able to take your digital assets with you or your avatar with you. 3D being a component. You know, people sometimes say, wait, is TikTok or is Instagram, is my social media part of the metaverse? I'm not quite sure. And having this definition of it being a 3D space, having that spatial component to it kind of separates those things out. And then the part about working, playing, shopping, and socializing. Those things are happening today in some of these metaverse environments. And I'll talk about that. And then the second thing that we hear a lot of is the metaverse might be this 3D successor of the current internet that includes a convergence of the physical, augmented, and virtual reality. So that's kind of another definition that kind of supports our topic today, right? Like, how are these all connected? Well, it's because it's a convergence of those that enable something like this. Lots happened there. I think the main, if you look back into 1992, this is the thing that often gets talked about. Snow Crash, there was a novel that talked about this concept of the metaverse. Very interesting. I've read the first one, and I'm reading the second there. Go to 2003, if you remember, Second Life came out. It was way before its time. It had quite a lot of users there. 1 million users were spending 4 hours a day in 2003 in this virtual environment called Second Life. And so there was already kind of a hint towards what was kind of coming of this kind of virtual digital version where you're kind of interacting with people and having a separate kind of experience with people. Very interesting to kind of go back and look at that. If we go to 2011, we have the novel Ready Player One, right? And then if you go 7 years after that, Steven Spielberg creates Ready Player One. If you haven't seen that, that's an example of what somebody's envisioning, comes from that book, but they're envisioning of like, hey, the metaverse will be like this place where you can go and you can actually, and they do a lot of gaming, interaction, things like that. It's definitely like a futuristic looking, hyper-realistic version of that where even in any home you have like a treadmill that you're running around in a haptic suit. So it's kind of envisioning a very futuristic state of that. But today there is a version of the metaverse that exists. There are actually around 200 metaverse environments today. That might surprise you. So if you think about some of those environments that exist today, you have some big companies claim, you have like Meta, right? And we'll talk about that. They changed their name and they're saying, hey, we're Meta, and in the next 5 years, we're going to be a metaverse first company. They announced that last year. But there's some environments that have actually existed. So again, thinking about 3D virtual environments that exist today, some of these are blockchain based, meaning they're not owned by a corporation that, you need a crypto wallet to kind of engage with it. If you buy like NFTs or if you buy things, they go with you from environment to environment. That kind of thing. So these are 8 on the screen here: Decentraland, the Sandbox, Meta Horizon. So just for some stats, Decentraland has 300 million monthly active users, and it's not kids. It's actually between 20 and 35-year-olds, and their biggest user group is between I think it's 37 and 45. Out of all things, Decentraland. The Sandbox definitely targeting a younger crowd. But not quite released. They're in beta releases, and they have mass adoption from this younger Gen Z audience. You have quite a lot of brands are investing in the Sandbox and creating an experience there, creating kind of a gaming, immersive experiences there. You have Meta has created Horizon. They've created a few there. They're at 300 million daily, monthly active users as well. Somnium Space is one I'm really, really excited about. It's the most inaccessible one out of all of them. You need a really powerful PC. You need a powerful VR headset. You could connect all your motion tracking and move your hands and your mouth and all that. And I've actually gone in and connected a few times and seen what that's like. The number of users is really low, but it gives me a sense for where we're going, right, as more and more of that technology becomes accessible. Microsoft's doing a version called Mesh. Spatial is one of my favorites, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. One of my favorites. Zepeto is one that's the biggest kind of virtual world environment outside of the US that exists. CryptoVoxels, there's actually quite a lot here. You might have heard of VR Chat. There's some of these that aren't quite released yet, like Star Atlas and Blocktopia and Everdome. The ones at the bottom there are some that are coming. But all of these have this promise of, we're going to have this virtual space. And to be clear, none of them are really trying to be the single quote-unquote metaverse platform. What we're actually talking about is verses. There's just virtual environments that exist that have different use cases. You might have one that's more focused on interacting with your employees, interacting with your business, holding your monthly team meetings. You might have an environment that is focused more on gaming and communication. You might have another environment that's more focused on different types of service offerings. So a lot of them have different applications and usage. So like, Axie Infinity here, not an environment I'd probably spend a lot of time on. It's not really quite something that I'd want to spend time on, but it's an open world environment. There's lots of little characters. You're represented as a little character. So there's different takes on some of those that exist today. This is what I was talking about earlier with Meta. So Facebook bought Oculus for $2.3 billion in 2014. They changed to a Metaverse first company, and they said that's going to happen in the next 5 years. The name change is actually something that enabled quite a lot of buzz, right? And you can imagine that would be the case. As soon as they announced that, these other Metaverse environments kind of shot up, and there was a lot of interest there. But they've claimed that they've spent 18.5 in 2020 for R&D related to the Metaverse, 10 billion in 2021 alone for this division, creating 10,000 jobs in the EU. They already have a virtual reality headset, so they do have a little bit of an advantage there. I know there's mixed feelings on Meta. I hear them and I talk to people about them, and I'm not quite sure what that means, if I want to participate or do I want to enable that. Are they trying to become the single source of truth for this? So there's a lot of thoughts around that, but there's a lot that we can learn from how they're approaching this. They have a few different environments. They have Horizon Home, which hasn't been released, Horizon Worlds, which has been released, Horizon Workrooms, which is where you would work in a virtual environment. Again, you have to have a VR headset for those today. Quite inaccessible. They still have 300 million monthly active users on that, which is very interesting. But what is coming from Horizon, from Meta, is that they've already claimed, hey, we're going to build Horizon World into Instagram. So imagine having a new tab that's not just a feed, it's not just videos, it's a virtual environment. And you might meet with people virtually. You might hold up your phone and say, oh, hey, how's it going? And we might do your stand-up that way at your meetings. So the fact that it's going to be brought into a social media platform, that's a huge enabler, massive adoption. Second thing is, they're going to make it browser capable. So they've already announced that. The CTO has announced that it's going to be something you can just go into a tab, type it in, log into your account, and now you're in a virtual environment. So again, more accessibility enables more usage. So we're going to see a lot of users go into that particular platform, so keep an eye on that. They are not the #1 platform. They don't have the most amount of users today, but definitely something to keep an eye on. I think it is something that's contributing. A lot of times people point to these two platforms. One is from Epic Games called Fortnite, probably heard of it, or you have younger siblings or kids that play it. Maybe you play it yourself. But why it's interesting to bring this up is Epic Games is very, very invested in building a virtual metaverse environment, open world. And there's some stats here. 350 million total users, 60 million monthly active users paying $3 billion, right? 40% of kids between 10 and 17. $1 billion of revenue generated from digital assets. I think about my cousin. I have a cousin that's a little younger, and I think about his last few birthdays and how he was like, I need currency for my Fortnite. That's what he wanted for his birthday. He didn't want like, the things that I would have wanted, like, oh, I want like a DJ set, or I want like a, whatever it was, right? These new shoes. It was, hey, how do I get this so I can go buy the skin that I need in Fortnite? If you think about this growing up generation, right, they're thinking about the digital economy is a big deal for them. Their digital assets are more valuable to them, most likely, and for some kids, than their physical assets. Imagine when that crowd gets to the workplace. And we might think like, that's crazy. But think about your Instagram accounts. Think about your TikTok account or your Facebook account. How much do you care about what your profile looks like? We also are invested in our digital economy, and we think about all the things you buy digitally. Think about the last month of purchases outside of your regular, things like your rent or your mortgage or whatever it might be. Where did you buy things? I'm like 70% on Amazon, right? I'm buying digitally. We're looking online to buy things. I might be invested in a shop and I buy things. So we're very much consumers of this as well. Unreal Engine is an engine that just got released about a month ago. I've been keeping track of that for a little while. It's Unreal Engine 5. It's something that was helping build the show The Mandalorian, if you saw that. It's a great show. It helped build, it was used for Lion King. Think about the hyper-realism of that. It's a gaming engine, but it's also enabling more of these virtual, hyper-realistic, photorealistic metaverse environments. And so Epic Games is very, very drastically invested, not in just Fortnite and building that game, but they're invested in building the structure and the technologies that will enable things like the metaverse. I just wanted to show, and I'm just gonna say Travis Scott, he's an artist. He held a show in Fortnite, so did Ariana Grande. There was actually a few concerts. But he generated 12 million users and he earned $20 million. Think about the Oscars, which apparently is the most viewed night of TV, 9.23 million viewers last year for the Oscars, right? And then you have over in Fortnite, while we're watching the Oscars, and it's just a small amount of people, you have 12 million users of this younger generation watching Travis Scott as this massive giant performing a 15-minute concert. And he generated $20 million on that. Compare that to what he earned from touring around the country in 12 months. It was about 50 million that he earned from that. So 15-minute show inside of an environment. So that's what some of these artists in entertainment are thinking about. That's why you're seeing these artists go to these environments. Roblox is even crazier. It's for a younger crowd, but they have 47.3 million users a day. That's daily active users. 47 million daily active users in this environment called Roblox. And they're generating quite a lot there, digital economy as well. It's cross-compatible, it's on a PC and mobile. It's becoming, if you think about Gen Z, it's become a way for doing self-expression. Self-expression is super important on this platform. And they've sold things like Gucci's been in there, and they've sold a $4,000 Gucci bag. Definitely not a kid buying things, right? Definitely somebody older. But $91,000 unique hat, this Damius Astra hat that they had was purchased for $91,000. You also have performers there. Lil Nas X was there, and he had 37 million viewers for his show. There's been others that were a part of that as well. But interesting to see all the usage there. So 14% of Roblox users are over 25, 67% are under the age of 16, right? 51% male, 44% female. Just to give you a sense of the demographics on some of these environments. So those are like gaming environments that are turning into these metaverse virtual environments. But it's showing you that the digital economy is important. Virtual environments, self-expression in a virtual sense is important to people. So practical use cases for the metaverse, honestly, you probably don't want to go hold a show in Fortnite or Roblox, and it's going to be too expensive for you. It's a little bit early for that. And I would say the metaverse is something that you should be familiar with. Start to think about strategies for your business and usage of the metaverse, of thinking about virtual environments and what it might be. Here's 6 that we're thinking about. We've created some environments for. We're doing this for our Texas office as well, where we're going to have a metaverse environment where we meet regularly. We might do that once a week. But you can hold virtual meetings. You could leverage a popular environment like Decentraland or Somnium Space or the Sandbox, and you could go and buy land, digital land, place something there and actually advertise there. There are companies doing that. You might interact with your team or clients. So not just with your team, but think about, hey, let me have a client join me. Let me give you a URL, freshtexas.com, logs in, put your first and last name, and now you're seeing me in a virtual environment. That's something we can do today. You can hold virtual and remote meetups. That's something we're going to do in Austin. We're going to have a metaverse meetup. It'll start digital, and we'll have part virtual, part in person, and anybody can join. So if you're interested, then we'll have some more around that. Being able to create a virtual presence in general. There's ways you can advertise or rent and do things like that. And then, this is the bottom one here is for these bigger brands, but engaging customers with interactive experiences. So you have companies like Samsung and BMW, and I'm thinking of some just from the last week that are investing in doing experiences for Pride Month or for some of their, I think it was the Fashion Week was one from a couple of weeks ago. So there's different applications and use cases for that. But practical use cases today and entry points for the metaverse today, and this is what I would recommend for you all today for the metaverse, is Spatial Io, a really cool company. I know their CEO, and we talked to them, and they've been doing some really cool things. When they announced the HoloLens, they were on the stage side by side with Microsoft saying, hey, we're invested in our platform. You can go into Google, like a HoloLens, a Magic Leap. You can go on your mobile phone. There's an app. You can go in the browser on your computer. They're the most accessible kind of metaverse platform today. And it's more targeted towards businesses. They like to think that they're a metaverse environment for artwork and experiences and businesses. But you can go in and create an account there today and then pick an environment and say, this is now my virtual office. And you can actually send a link to a friend. They can jump in. And you can do this all from the browser without downloading anything. Again, app-less experiences. So Spatial is a really cool environment to go and experience and actually create something. You might want to host your own meetings there with your team. So instead of thinking about how do we do things externally with the metaverse right now, understand it, become fluent in it, right, by creating these environments. I mentioned Decentraland and Meta Horizon just because Decentraland's the biggest one right now. So going into Decentraland, it's browser as well, you can experience what a blockchain-based metaverse environment is. They have a casino in there. It's a virtual world. So it's like, think about like the globe and you're like, oh, go to this location. They do the same thing. Go to this location. You can go to a casino there and you'll be introduced by somebody that has a full-time job explaining what the casino is. So I talked to somebody that's like 22 years old, is in college, and they have a full-time job in the metaverse, and they're introducing the casino. They walk you around. They say, hey, and then if you go to a slot machine, that might be owned by 3 different people. And every time I pull that thing, whoever owns that slot machine is getting a small percentage of that, like a real casino, right? So their ownership of devices and things like that. Those are the types of things happening in these environments. But go and experience it. See what's going on with that. And then Meta Horizon is a VR first. Like I said, they're coming to the browser. They're coming to social media platforms. But get familiar with Meta Horizon. It is something you have to request access for. It's a lot of people using it. But you can go and experience what that proximity part that I was talking about. What is it like to interact with people? 15 minutes inside of Meta Horizon is going to blow your mind a little bit if you haven't already done it. Because you're interacting with somebody from a whole different location. They're representing themselves in a virtual way, right? I'm waving, I can high five, I can put my hand together with them, and then it puts us in a separate room and we can have a private conversation. There are DJs and recording studios, and there are businesses hosting meetups in these environments. Lots and lots of things are happening in these environments. So that would be kind of the entry points for the metaverse today. Again, form some strategies, educate yourself, get familiar with what exists. So lots coming for the metaverse in the future. Very similar to AR, VR, there's some advancements that need to happen. Mass adoption is a big one of those. As AR, VR becomes more accessible, that will enable things because those are enabling technologies for the metaverse. Improved sensing, mass adoption. If we can get to that $50 million user adoption on some of these platforms, definitely keep an eye on those things. As we start to see these big companies go to social media, keep an eye on those things. Those will be important. In the same way that in 1995, I don't know if you've seen this, I love this video, and I don't have it because it's going to be too choppy here, but I think about Bill Gates was being interviewed by David Letterman. 1995, he's on The Tonight Show, right? And David Letterman says, hey, so tell me about this whole internet thing. What is this? Is this going to stick around? And he's like, yes, it will. Yes, it will. It's coming, and you can watch a baseball game. And he's like, have you heard of the radio? And then everyone laughs, like, ha, ha, ha. And then he's like, yeah, well, the difference is you can go and play it back. And he's like, have you heard of the tape recorder? And ha, ha, and that's the end of the clip. And it's basically everyone laughing like, oh, this internet thing, that's not happening. That was 95. Think about 4 years later, 70% of the US was using the internet in some way or another. I see personally, I see the metaverse as a technology that is coming. You shouldn't see it as this Ready Player One immersive, my kids are gonna be totally online in virtual VR headsets. Think about it as the way that the internet came. It's another way to represent your business in another virtual environment. How important is it for your business, if you're a local business, to be on Google Maps, right? Or how important is it to have a presence to have a Facebook page or to have these pages? It'll be very similar. You might need a presence. It'll be a new platform to represent yourself, to engage with a new audience that is growing, that will eventually be in the business world, right, for some of these younger platforms. But more and more coming, major adoption will come from that in the future. Here's some things that Microsoft's saying. The metaverse is here. It's not only transforming how we see the world, but how we participate in it. I believe the metaverse is the next chapter for the internet. And there's probably 15 other quotes that I didn't show and examples I didn't show here, but lots of interesting things there. So to end, there are entry points for augmented virtual reality and the metaverse today. A lot of these are emerging technologies. A lot of these are growing. We're not at the mass adoption stage for all of these yet, but they're things that we need to keep an eye on. In the same way that when the internet was coming, you didn't want to miss the wave. 52% of businesses that were in the Fortune 500 in 2000, the year 2000, no longer exist today, right? And a lot of that had to do because of digital transformation that's happened. 52% of businesses since the year 2000 no longer exist today. It's pretty crazy to think about. So I put some social media links here, Fresh Consulting. At Fresh Consulting, we're on like all the social platforms, freshconsulting.com on the web. We're an organization that can help you navigate that. We have service offerings that aren't just like, go and execute on AR and VR. It might be more of like, what are the strategies behind how we could use technologies like this? We're very much involved with customers thinking about those things. It's kind of like the phase 0 type work to help us enable the right usage of some of those technologies. I put my own personal things there. I'm on Twitter and LinkedIn, and surprisingly I have a popular TikTok account with a bunch of young people that care about the metaverse and are interested in it, or disagree with what I say on the metaverse, but it's interesting to see some of that stuff there. But that's where you can learn more about Fresh and some of the things that we're talking about. So with that, I'm going to grab a microphone, and we have time for a few questions. I think we have a few minutes for that too, so let me grab a microphone here. All right. Okay, I have 2 microphones. Anything? Oh, great. Get some help here. Thank you very much. Do we have any questions? We have a few over here. Great.
Thanks for the presentation. You didn't mention centralized versus decentralized, blockchain versus the net, or sandbox versus the net. In fact, Meta's no different than Facebook was, and they basically monetize their data. I know that's probably your biggest customer, but do you have an opinion on which one's going to win in the end?
Thank you. So his question is, I didn't talk about decentralized versus centralized metaverse environments. He talked about Meta being one that is centralized. It's a corporation, a customer of ours for sure. And then they have the decentralized side. Yes, I definitely have an opinion on that. I'm very excited about decentralized metaverse environments. I'm excited about it for a number of reasons. It enables a lot of interoperability. So what I mean by that is how I represent myself virtually, right, in a metaverse environment, I can actually take that with me. Or if I buy a, I know this might sound a little far-fetched, if I buy a vehicle that lets me drive around to these different lands, right, these different areas in a NFT vehicle, I can take that with me from one blockchain environment to the other. And a lot of these are enabling a lot of that because they're on the blockchain. If I buy those NFTs that are vehicles or wearables or things like that, that can go from place to place. A lot of these blockchain environments are enabling interoperability. It's a big buzzword right now if you are following the metaverse. It's like how cross-compatible are these things? So I'm very excited about that. What I'm excited about on the centralized side is that they can move a lot faster sometimes than the decentralized. Decentralized is, you know, if you are a landowner, then you might have 5 votes on what happens next. And so you have a whole community of people voting on what might happen to move things forward. That's what happens in Decentraland today. One of those blockchain-based, it's an Ethereum-based metaverse environment. But it's a little slower to move the needle there. And that's okay. It's, I'm all for the blockchain side, but centralized environments might be able to move that slightly faster because they're making decisions on seeing how things are moving. And so there are about, yeah, I think of the bigger platforms, you know, I'm going to say these out loud, but Decentraland, the Sandbox, Spatial Io are probably the 3 bigger decentralized metaverse environments that you should keep an eye on and you know, be aware of.
So you mentioned the wearables. How far off do you think we are from haptic devices being incorporated into the pipeline?
How far are we from what, sorry?
Haptic devices?
Haptic.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a few haptic. Okay, so the question is, we talked about wearables and things like that. How far are we away from haptics being included in the kind of the experience of, it could be AR, VR, or the metaverse technically, right? We are a little ways off today still with that. The Quest is compatible with about 5 different haptic suits. B-Haptics is one that I'm most familiar with. They are invested, there's a few of those metaverse environments that are investing in B-Haptics. I've actually tested that one at CES and South by Southwest, CES for 2 years in a row and seen the advancements on that. So they're coming. There are games, the way that it works today basically is if you're getting a haptic suit, the way it looks like a vest. It looks like a bulletproof vest almost. You put it on, sometimes it's a little heavy and has little, little sensors on it. Some of them actually vibrate. Some of them have kind of like a electrode, like kind of buzzing thing. Not one that like actually shocks you, but enough to give you an effect. Some of those come with full body suits, so a little bit more accessible. So they go all the way down to sleeves, and you can go down to your legs as well. So there's a few different ones. There's another one called Tesla Suit. So Tesla Suit and B-Haptics are the biggest two players of haptics today. And one of those, B-Haptics, has about 20 games on the Quest that are compatible with that one. And then Tesla Suit has a lot less. So we're still a ways away from getting a haptic suit. I think it's, again, I think as we think about those that really want to get the immersion aspect of VR or the metaverse or AR, things like that, that'll become more and more important, but it's got to become more accessible to the users. So those are still hundreds of dollars of headsets, right? So not only are you buying a $300 to $500 VR headset, like a Quest, now you're having to buy the VR compatible haptic suit, right? Which is another $300 to $500. Some of those can be thousands of dollars, some of the more immersive ones. And then they have to be tethered still. So I think we're still a ways away from that. I think we're going to see more mass adoption of the VR headsets before we see the haptics, but that will follow soon after. I think 5 to 7 years is probably closer to what we'll see there.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you so much for the presentation. My name is Javier Fidel. I'm Director of Innovation at HTX Labs. So
Great.
I look forward to having a conversation with you. We have an immersive training platform that addresses a lot of the ways that this technology can scale to solve like procedural training problems.
Perfect.
And I have two questions. One in the near term, one longer term. In the near term, what do you think are the 3 biggest challenges with getting this technology to your customers?
The 3 biggest challenges of getting this technology to our customers, and VR specifically, or the 3 technologies? XR, which is the umbrella of augmented and virtual and smart glasses technology. The 3 biggest hurdles for getting it into our customers is, number 1, having the majority of our customers using these technologies. So again, the mass adoption is a pretty big deal. We need to have a lot of our customers using it. If we had 75% of our customers on Instagram, that's a big deal. Now we can advertise on Instagram, right? If you have 51% of your customers, even a smaller, if you have 25% of your customers that have VR headsets and you know that information and you know how they use it, that could be, you might think about immersive experiences or training or remote telepresence kind of things. So the fact that it's not quite accessible, the adoption isn't there would be the number 1 issue with that. I think the second is that the majority of users that are using these headsets, the XR kind of devices, are still kind of in the gaming space. And that's okay, we're learning a lot from gaming, but they're spending a lot more time on things like Beat Saber, which made $100 million in 2021. Just alone, $100 million of revenue for Beat Saber, a game, right? There's a lot of game focus, and so shifting from the focus of gaming to practical, realistic kind of use cases that people would actually prefer to do in an XR device versus in person, right? And then the third, stretching me thin here a little bit. Yeah, and I definitely want to chat with you a little bit, but yeah, I think, there might be some other things there that come with that, right? With the level of immersion, right? Yeah.
The level of immersion and kind of the haptics question.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and I think related to the decentralization of data is also a significant overlap between those concepts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so then the forward-thinking question, in terms of the convergence of these technologies, I loved everything that you said, I think that's spot on. The only thing that was maybe missing, I'm curious to hear more of your thoughts on it, is in regards to artificial intelligence and how these technologies can also have an impact in the way that we interface with those technologies. So anything you can share about that would be great.
Yes, so the question is, we left out AI as a component that will be enabling or leveraged as part of these the metaverse, AR, VR. I 100% agree with you, and I intentionally left it out because it's a big topic. It's a big topic, but it will happen. So if you think about, let's talk about the metaverse, for example, right? A lot of the thought process today is, how do I represent myself or my brand in a virtual environment? What we're not thinking about is, what does a chatbot do for you today, right? It can represent your business and speak for your brand, and as AI continues to advance, you can have AI represent your business and talk to customers. So I disconnect, AI Johnny kind of comes in, right? And it's clear to customers, you don't want to like fake that, but that would allow them to actually interact with people that can, with an AI, essentially that can represent your business efficiently. But there's a lot more that comes from that. With AI enables quite a lot from an augmented reality perspective. So if I'm wearing an everyday wearable smart glass, AI will enable things like a CRM, right? I look at Gary back there and it can remind me, hey, he just visited this location and his wife's name is this. And so AI can enable computer vision, right? And to be able to recognize things. Think about Google Lens in your glasses. They're thinking about that. Google's thinking about that. Looking at my slides and getting my notes and recognizing things or getting information, finding social media. So AI is an enabler for sure from an augmented reality standpoint. It's a big, I think we could do a whole talk on that actually, on how AI enables these XR technologies. Thank you for bringing that up. Great, and I think we have another question up here on the top right. Or is... Well, this will be our last question. Thank you all. I know we're a little bit over time and I want to be respectful of our space here.
Talk about some of the early industry applications that are happening. I've seen some examples of other industries, or what are you seeing from that perspective? And then the second part of that question is also, can you talk about how you see NFTs in the meta space?
Yes. Okay, so this is two separate questions here. One is how are different industries leveraging XR, if I heard correctly? And then the second is, how are NFTs important for the metaverse? So there are a lot of different use cases for industries right now with XR, again, augmented and virtual reality. Healthcare is absolutely a big one. There's remote surgeries are something that's being, there's a lot of investment and R&D happening there. But it can be things like, I'm thinking about different spaces. So fashion is a big one. I bought these glasses on Warby Parker using augmented reality, right? I put on the glasses, I put them on my face, I swiped until I liked it, and then I bought them. Can't believe that happened. That's happening today. So fashion, it's happening. We're seeing more and more stores being able to walk up to a mirror, and then you can see the jersey on you from these sports teams, right? And you can go and swipe the jersey and say buy, right? And so being able to, fashion is kind of a really easy, practical way to use it. We're seeing customers use it, again, like I think about WWDC, Apple just launched things. Any new product that they launch, they have a browser version that you can place your Mac Pro or your MacBook Pro or your Apple TV in your environment. Amazon has a mass adoption of AR, quite a lot of usage of that. So as it relates to kind of e-commerce and commerce in general. We talked about, and I think I'd love to chat, but there's other industrial applications for VR, for training, for, again, the telepresence kind of touring that's used a lot. So real estate has a lot of usage for definitely VR as it relates to kind of experiencing an environment and things like that. I can go more and more into other industries, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I think what we might do, because I'm very interested in that topic, like think about all these different industries, and I'd love to touch on all of them. We might want to come up with a graphic that we can put on our website, maybe on a blog that talks about those different applications. And the second part to your question is, how are NFTs? Why are those important for the metaverse? They're actually quite important. Again, I think on the topic of interoperability, it allows you to bring things with you. That doesn't sound like a big deal. But okay, I don't do a lot of gaming, but when I do game, I play NBA 2K, this basketball game, and I go and buy myself some shoes, I give myself some virtual tattoos, and then the next year another game comes out and I lose all of the things that I spent, right, that I earned or I spent money on. I'm on the next version of the game and I'm starting from zero. And I do the same thing again, I build my character, do the same thing the next year. And so it becomes, that's a lot of what's happening with these environments. When you don't have NFTs, you don't have the blockchain. The blockchain and NFTs allows you to buy something and take it with you. You own it, it goes with you. It's a digital asset and a virtual thing that can come with you. That's true. So the question is, do we really expect that to happen from one platform to another? I don't think a lot will adopt it, but I think we will have some that are doing that. So I think an example of that is Somnium Space today is both Ethereum, as an Ethereum-based blockchain that accepts Ethereum-based NFTs as well as Solana-based NFTs. That's multi-blockchain, it's a multi-blockchain platform. So I buy artwork, what's that? This is a metaverse platform called Somnium Space. There's a few that are doing that, but that's a multi-blockchain environment that is enabling you to buy something and bring something with you. Again, you can buy a Solana-based vehicle, and you can have a Ethereum-based wearable, and I can bring that. There's a platform called, this is another one to think about. This one's called Ready Player Me. Don't be confused with Ready Player One. ReadyPlayer.me is an interoperable avatar platform. I create my avatar once. I can go to Somnium Space. I can go to Somnium Space, Spatial. I can go to Monaverse. I can go to about, I think they have 2,000 and growing integrations today. And that avatar and the NFT head that I bought from deadmau5 as my head, if that's how I want to represent myself in my environment, that goes with me to 2,000 environments. That is true interoperability that's happening today. And there's more and more coming. That's an example of one company focused on interoperability across multiple virtual platforms. And we're going to see more and more infrastructure and bridges that get built that are multi-crypto wallet compatibility, multi-blockchain compatibility, and more will be enabled. But we're early. We're definitely early, and I want to see more. I think the ideal is that a lot of these verses that exist allow us to bring those avatar and our assets and our digital goods with us. So thank you for that question. And with that, we will close.